I'm president of the Otter Creek Audubon Society. I will be your speaker tonight. I'm going to be talking about long-eared owls. Before we start, I should probably put this on. Can you hear me through the speakers? Yep. Oh, excellent. Okay, so a few announcements. Upcoming events for Otter Creek Audubon Society. On January 11th, we have our monthly wildlife walk at Otterview Park. That will be led by Jim Phillips, who is back here. We have a herd grassland ribbon cutting event. If you guys don't know, we recently acquired the property in Weybridge, 55 acres. And we're going to have an official ribbon cutting and walk on January 25th, and that should say 10 a.m., not 8 a.m. And if you do come, we appreciate it if you carpool, because there really isn't much parking out there. Something we hope to change in the future. Lecture by UVM Professor William Keaton on February 6th. This is not an Otter Creek Audubon Society event, but we thought it would be something you'd be interested in. He's going to be talking about climate-friendly forests. That will be here in this room. And then our February 8th monthly wildlife walk. Again, our walks are every month on the second Saturday of the month. If you want to come, they're fun, and I will be leading that one. And then our next cabin fever lecture will be Plants for Birds, and that will be presented by Gwendolyn Causer from Audubon, Vermont. So hope to see you all come out for that. All right. So, I'm here to talk to you about long-eared owls. This is a long-eared owl. This is John James Audubon's print. He shot and killed this owl, and then he drew it. So I'm a bird watcher. I've been bird watching seriously since about 2004, dabbling before that. I spent about 10 years just and accumulating my life list and picking up birds. And what I found is that pretty much any bird you want to see, you can find just by going out and birding. And some you have to go to specific habitat to find them, but over time you start building up your list. And I built up my list to the point where, except for a few species that you had to go to the Northeast Kingdom to get, or up on the top of a mountain to get, I had pretty much every common bird that you could see in this area on my life list, except for long-eared owl, which is purported to be a regular bird in the area. And if you go and look up the, well, I'll get to that in a second. Nobody knew how you go and find a long-eared owl. If I wanted to find other species, like say a prairie warbler or a blue-winged warbler, I know I could go to shrubland and find it there. Or if I wanted to find a big-nosed thrush, I could go to the top of a mountain and find it there. If you asked birders, how do you find a long-eared owl, you didn't get an answer. So I go birding a lot with Ian Worley. He's my friend. That's him. That's his favorite scare mommy pick from the 60s when he was working in Alaska studying mosses. That's what he looks like these days. So we were talking about long-eared owls, and we didn't know how to find them, and we decided, you know, nobody's going to tell us. We should just go look ourselves. So along with Ian Worley here, and another collaborator, this is Tyler Paquette, local birder, grew up here, probably one of the best birders around, one of the best naturalists around, one of the best fishermen. You can see his cake there, that says 259, that's 259 species he photographed in 1 year in Vermont. He gave a presentation on that here. If you want to see that, you can find it on our website. And a lot of the good pictures in this presentation come from Tyler. So we all wanted to find long-eared owls. Ian and I started talking about it. We later recruited Tyler, and we decided we had to come up with a plan, but that's me. I had to tell you first about my personal frustration. Like I said, 10 years or so, thinking I might eventually, through Kismet, run into a long-eared owl, and I hadn't. One evening, a September evening, about maybe 2010, 2009, 2010, I was sitting in my home. It was a warm night. The windows were all open, and I started hearing a hoot. And if you don't know what a long-eared owl sounds like, it's just basically a series of basic hoots. And hopefully I'll be able to play it here. This is going to be a good night for technology.
Yeah, it's really quiet.
Somewhere in here, I have here we go. So that's a long-eared owl sounds like, a series of plaintive hoots like that. And I was sitting in my house, and all of a sudden I started hearing that hoot, hoot, hoot. I said, gosh, that's a long-eared owl. The perfect rhythm, the perfect sound. So I go grab my stuff and I run out the front door, and I'm hearing it, and I live on Wayward Street, Middlebury, and sound was coming up from the college. So that's a little odd, but there are some woods over there, there's some fields over there, so maybe. So I start following the sound, and I walk about a half mile, and it doesn't feel like I'm getting any closer to it. And I walk about another quarter mile, and the sound, I'm going south, and the sound is starting to go off to my east, and then I'm starting to think that I'm not really hearing what I think I'm hearing, and I realize what I'm hearing is the wind turbine from the college, which had broken. And it was rotating at the perfect speed to make that hoot with its broken whatever bearings. I don't know what it was. It was an absolutely perfect match for the song. Yeah, slapped myself in the forehead. A couple days later, a crane came, took the top off. It went away for a couple months and came back. So that's my big frustration story there. So long-eared owl is an owl, so we should talk about what other kind of owls we have in Vermont. So here are the common owls, and we'll start on over here on the far end. That is a screech owl. Comes in two color varieties. That one's gray, the other's, oh, that's the mixed one. That's the median one. They come in gray and brown here. The bird in the middle is a great horned owl. This guy is a snowy owl. I guess we can kind of call him a common owl here now. Not this year maybe, but we've had a couple big years that it makes it seem like they're pretty common. Barred owl, probably the most common owl in the state. In the middle is a short-eared owl. And here's a saw-whet owl. He's about 8 inches high. And then we also have uncommon nester here is a barn owl. I happen to know one did nest in the state last year, but I can't tell you where. I'm sworn to secrecy. And then we have rarities, which sometime pop down. On the far end, we've got boreal owl, which they're hard to come by. Apparently, there's one near Montreal now, somewhere south of Montreal, that's being very cooperative, and birders up there have been going to take pictures of it, including Tyler Paquette, who just posted some great pictures. The one in the middle is a northern hawk owl, which every few years one will pop down into the state and set up a winter territory. It'll be there for months, and everybody flocks to it. You can find it pretty easily. Great gray owl will do the same thing, but they're less common, and where they like to set up is usually deeper in the woods and a little harder to get to. This is the long-eared owl. So we should talk about what is a long-eared owl and what makes it different from the other owls. Long-eared owl is a medium-sized owl. It's smaller than a crow. They're actually quite small. It's called medium-sized, but if you see them up close, they're very small. They have long ears, and they have these lines that go down through the face here, and they have an orange facial disc. And they're well streaked all down their breast with these crossed feathers. They hunt rodents almost exclusively. Sometimes they do amphibians and other small things. They like large fields, and they like woods to roost in. And they like to, and this is one of their camouflage displays. They will pack their body up really tight and put those ears way up high, and what they're trying to do is mimic a broken branch. They are a species that is all around the northern hemisphere. There's some talk about whether or not the Eurasian one should be split from the North American one, because as you can see, there's no real overlap there where they can cross over in their range. But for now, there's no real push to do that, so it's all considered one species.
What's the color numbers?
I think I don't have this key. The numbers I think are based on subspecies, some species, and the colors would be all year round. The blue would be winter, and the yellow would be just breeding season. And this is a pretty fuzzy map. I wouldn't trust its accuracy too much. It probably goes a little too deep in the south in North America here. Similar species, you can see the other owl with big ears, the great horned owl, also has an orange facial disc, but it does not have those lines that come through the eye, and its ears, they aren't ears actually, they're just feather tufts, are widely set. Long-eared owl, they are closely set, almost above the eyes, and again, that facial pattern. Also similar, short-eared owl. This is a great picture that was taken by Craig Zondag over here. That's a short-eared owl with its ears about at maximum level. You can see its tufts are even closer together still, and it does not have an orange facial disc, and it has this goth eye makeup here on the sides. So that's a good thing to look for when you're trying to determine the difference between these two guys. And in flight, these guys are really similar in flight. If you get a good look, again, you can look for the goth makeup and no goth makeup. But what you really want to look for is the wing pattern. The short-eared owl has very bold bars, both on the upper and lower side of their wings, and the long-eared owl does not have very bold bars. So they're really well camouflaged. I'm sure you guys can see that here. You can see this one here, but did you see this one? Did you see this one? Did you see this one? They like to get into a roost together and hang out like this. All right, so going back to Ian and I starting our search, how are we going to do this? So the first thing we did was read all the literature we could find. We looked into previous local sightings. We asked friends about it. And we contacted experts, and the one big one that Ian talked to was the Owl Research Institute in Montana. They do a lot of studies of long-eared owls out there in Montana. What do the local sources, the sources say about long-eared owls' presence in Vermont? So here's a great resource if you're a birder. This Birdwatching in Vermont is a great thing. You can flip it to the back, and it has pages that tell you little snippets about where to find birds and when they are here. This is what they say about long-eared owls. Highly secretive and nocturnal, it prefers stands of conifers near openings for nesting and communal winter roosts. Little is known about its status, but most sightings are from the Champlain Valley. So not very specific. The breeding bird atlas. I think it was, I'm forgetting the years of it, it'll be up here in a second. But for 5 years, birders went out to specific blocks and searched them all, and so this is the published results of it. Here's what they say about it. The long-eared owl remains an enigma, poorly known, and seldom seen by the most active observers. So that's what I was kind of saying. Again, not very helpful. Here's their map. This is what they found. So it was 2003 to 2007. So the dark green is a confirmed nester. The slightly darker, lighter green is probable. And here's a weird outlier over here. I can't imagine why that bird was there, from what I know now, but there are still gaps in our knowledge. So not a lot of them. Christmas bird count. Historically, and this is at the start of our search, so from the start of our search, Ferrisburg had them in 1994, 2004, 2009. Middlebury had them in 94, 96, 97, 2000, 2001, and 2002, so a couple little streaks there. Heinsberg had never had one, and Mount Abe had them every year. So you bet we were contacting the person who runs the Mount Abe count. Jim, do you remember?
Randy Duran.
Randy Duran, thank you. Randy Duran. So Ian contacted Randy, asked him about it. He was told it's a winter roost on private property. And so we were fine with that. You know, we weren't asking for directions. And then Ian asked him about the habitat, and he was just as cagey, which again, understandable, sensitive species, private property. So Randy was not a great source of information for this. We understand, not a problem. We were still gonna go look on our own. Birds of Vermont Records Committee, which if you find a rare bird, you have to submit a report to them called a rare species documentation report. So they consider the bird a year-round resident, and they do not require rare species documentation except when they're nesting. So that is part of, you know, that frustration level. We don't know how to find them, but we know they're here. So the literature was not helpful. eBird, this is all of the eBird sightings up to about 2010. I'm sorry, when we started the searching in 2015. And it's just a bunch of dots, and it looks like there's some good clustering there that you could maybe look into, but if you break it down by year, not really so much. They're scattered little reports. You can see up in Grand Isle, that's pretty common. That's Dave Hoag, who lives up there. He knows a site up there that he's been checking out for years, but it gave us some ideas of some places we might want to look, but there were no clear centers that we could go to and search for. But given all the information we got and what we looked for, we came up with these search parameters. Evergreen tree stands adjacent to large fields near bodies of water. And that's something we got from the Montana Owl Center. They said they always find long-eared owls near water. I'm going to come back to that later. So we decided what our search area would be west of Route 7, because that's our regular stomping grounds. We know the roads. and we didn't want to get into the Green Mountains, which absolutely is not the right place for them. So we just thought that would be a good slice to break it down into. And then we went into Google Earth or Google Maps, and then we could look at the territory up here and look for places that might look like what we wanted. And so some of the places, this is Little Otter Creek Wildlife Management Area. So big conifer stand, big fields around it. And then down here, conifer stands and big fields. That was one place that we thought looked good. Mount Independence, there was a history of nesting long-eared owls down here, so we decided to check that out too. So that's our very northern end, and this is our very southern end, and we found lots of little places in between that maybe looked good. So off we went searching for our owls. We had to prep first, of course. We had to familiarize ourselves with the field marks. We had to learn the sounds, and there really are a lot of sounds. And here I go again, tempting technology. So you heard the hoot. There's also the female. Oh, I got the wrong one here. Let's see if it's going to go with it. That's alarm calls and bill snaps. This is the female's call. And that's just some of the variety of sounds they make. The chicks on the nest make a screeching, begging sound. And then after learning these long-eared owl sounds, we then had to go and learn the other owl sounds because some of them make similar calls. The alarm call of the saw-whet owl sounds similar to the alarm call of the long-eared. The female call you just heard sounds like a solicitation call that great horned owls make. So there are a lot of learning all the little nuanced sounds, and for that we use websites like Xenocanto and the Macaulay Library, and you can go and find tons of sounds that people have recorded and went through a lot of them, emailed each other back and forth about all the sounds. Is this sound similar to this sound? What's the nuance? How can you tell this sound from this sound? And then you get in the field and, is it still in your head? So our methods for search, our search window was from December to June, night visits to likely locations. We did active playback. We were playing recordings of owl sounds, which is ethically in a gray area. Some people say absolutely no, you should not do that. We were engaged in trying to learn something, so we felt a little justified in doing it. Once we got into breeding season, we knocked it off and we went to passive listening because we didn't want to disturb anyone when they were on their nests. So we'd go out to our fields, we'd play, and we'd listen, and hopefully we'd find things. Also in the daytime, we'd go to sites and walk the woods. We'd look for signs, we'd look for birds, obviously. We'd look for nests that might be out there. We'd look for wash on trees where they fly in and out and they leave their droppings, and it gives you a little visual marker. And we'd look for pellets on the ground. Owls, of course, cork up the leftover food, bone, hair, things they can't digest. They spit it back up in an owl pellet. So we were looking for those as well. We did 60 to 80 trips in a 2-year period. And I have to say, about 2 or 3 trips into it, I received an email from Tyler Paquette, who had been traveling back and forth. He was working out west in California, and he'd come back here when in the winter time. He sent me an email that said, I see you guys are birding a lot, what the heck are you doing? Or owling a lot, what the heck you're doing? And Ian and I said, we should recruit him. So we told him we were looking for long-eared owls, and he started coming on with us for a lot of our day trips. His work schedule didn't allow him to do the night trips as much. So he was spending time, and sometimes he'd do solo trips. Sometimes I do solo trips, sometimes Ian would do solo trips. So this is accumulation, 60 to 80 trips in 2 years. 2013 to 2014, no long-eared owls discovered. 2014 to 15, no long-eared owls discovered. We did find a heck of a lot of owls, though. One of the first nights Ian and I did it, we were in Payne and northern Addison. We did a trip, and we had 12 saw-whet owls on that night. We found every owl you can think of, all the common owls, horns, bards, short-eareds, screech owls, but no long-eareds. So obviously there was something wrong with our methodology. So 2015, Tyler Paquette, as I was saying, he was traveling out west. He'd come back. Every once in a while, he would take a bird guide job where he would act as a bird expert. There was a man in New Jersey who would hire him to come out and help him spot birds. And he did that one time. And then at the end of the day, that man said, oh, I know where people have been seeing long-eared owls. Why don't we go look at that? And they went there and they looked at that. And they found a long-eared owl. Tyler came back after that trip to Vermont. He was out birding one day, and he was driving around Bridport, and he drove past a place, and he went, gosh, that looks exactly like the place in New Jersey where I saw the long-eared owls. So he sent us an email about it, and Ian knew the place, he knew the farmer, so Ian called him up, got us permission to go in there. Ian went in there that night, and he heard a long-eared owl. The next day, Tyler went in there, and I should say, this is what it looked like. It's red cedar scrub. This is juniper trees or red cedar, and this is the dominant plant in the area. There's a lower story. It's usually honeysuckle or other shrubs like that. This is what it looks like next to a field. So this is what Tyler saw. There's the juniper berries, if you want to see those up close to help you ID the tree. That's a nice full one right there. There. Tyler went in the next day and he found this guy. So we went, wow, that's great. Let's go look for juniper, places with juniper. So we went around, we pulled up Google Earth, and we looked at what that place looked like from the aerial maps, and we tried to find other places that looked like it from the aerial maps. Tyler went to another spot. So red cedar stands adjacent to large fields is what we're looking for. So this is mature mixed woods of hardwood and pine. This is cedar stand. This is cedar stand. This is cedar stand. So this is what we're looking for visually on the map. We found a bunch of places that looked like that. And Tyler went out to another place and he found this one. Then he went out to another place and he found this one. Then he went out to another place and he found this one. And then he emailed us and he said, can it be this easy? Ian and I went out to the original place. We got to hear the owl, then we got to see it fly overhead. So that's me, my life bird, long-eared owl, right there. I did not get a picture because my camera does not work in the dark. But that was very exciting. Tyler went in there again to that same spot, and he found this clump up here. So this was March, so very early in the breeding season. So we suspected there was probably a nest. Now our protocol has kind of changed. This is what we call the Bridport site number 1. Now, like I said, the Birds of Vermont Records Committee does not require you to send a rare species documentation just to see a bird, but if you discover nesting, then you need to report it. And that's what we were wanting to do now. So the kind of nests that they use, they take over abandoned crow's nests, which is what we believe this one at the Bridport site 1 was, or they'll take over a squirrel nest, a hawk nest, heron nest, sometimes just a tree that has a nice clump, but undercover, not up at the top, down a little bit. So the female chooses the site. Incubation is 26 to 28 days. The female is fed by the male while she's incubating on the nest. Both the male and female feed the chicks. They fledge after 23 to 26 days, so that's over 50 days altogether on the nest. After fledging, the female both the male and female will still tend the fledglings, even after they're fully able to fly for another 56 to 63 days. So that's a lot of care for those birds. I don't know what my next slide is. I don't know if I'm going to get ahead of myself. I probably am. Okay, so our monitoring protocol, we would do visits generally 10 plus days apart to minimize disturbance. One person would go into the nesting area briefly, make an observation, and then promptly leave. The second person would be outside the area looking for birds that flushed out. We made several trips inside. This is the nest up close. And we would see the birds flying off. Actually, right before this. So right after Tyler found the nest, we did our first trip out there. We checked the nest, and we didn't see anything in the nest at that time. We came out and we waited to see if one would come out, and one did. It came from, we were standing in the field, and the hedge was in front of us, and one came out flying behind us, and it flew up over the nest site, and it started doing those nest snaps, those bill snaps, and it circled overhead, and suddenly second owl came up out of there. So then they started circling together like this, calling and snapping back and forth at each other, circling, 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 circling. It went on for so long. You know how time stretches when you're seeing something amazing? I can't really tell you how long it was. In my mind, it was like 5 minutes. It might have been much shorter than that. But they were circling, 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 circling until suddenly one of them did a wing clap, which is something else they do. And then they split off. We presume the female went back down to the nest, and the male went off hunting. And that was just amazing to see that. 10 days later, popped into the nest. The next time I went in there, it was a little dark. I could see just the female's tufts sticking up out of the nest. I did not get a picture of that. The next time we went, fuzzy owlet head. It's not a great picture. That's sky, that's owlet. On the next 10-day, Ian and I weren't available to visit, and we were running out the window. We called Tyler, said, Tyler, can you go check the nest? So he went out, and because Tyler has the most amazing birding luck of anyone I know, he caught them on the day they fledged. So this is a defense display they do. He's mantling up, he's looking big and scary, looking right at you, saying, I'm a big mean thing, go away from me. And here's a nice up close look at the face. Yeah, so confirmed nesting, confirmed fledging. There were 3 chicks that Tyler saw. He only got good pictures of this one. So very successful search we had there. And then during that time, Ian and I had also been searching other places, and we've been finding, going to other cedar stands and finding more long-eared owls in them. And one was just down the road from Ian's house, which is on Snake Mountain. He had no clue that he lived so close. And then around the same time Tyler got those pictures, probably within a week, Ian's neighbor down the road called him up and said, hey, we've got these owl fledglings in our backyard. And he didn't tell her anything about them, he just, described them. And she said, big, gray, fuzzy, black faces, barred wings. Yeah, they were long-eared owl chicks, and there were 3 more chicks right down there, just down the road from Ian's house. So we'd been searching for 2 years all over Addison County, and Ian had them probably just down the road the whole time. So here are the results. 2013, 14, nothing. 2015, 16, 18 birds at 10 nest sites, 12 adults, and 2 nests with 3 fledglings each. So we cracked the code for nesting long-eared owls. The next year we took the year off mostly. Other than we did check in on some of the nest sites to see if they were re-nesting there. And we also visited a couple likely habitat sites where we hadn't found owls yet. We did find some re-nesting owls. We did not find any new sites that year. Around that time, Craig Zondag gave me a call. He said, I think I found the long-eared owl feathers. He lives in New Haven. He says, I think I found long-eared owl feather, and I went out to take a look at it. Yep, that was a long-eared owl feather. And he also had the talon. Whoa. So this is probably one of the roosting birds from the Mount Abe site that they always find on the Christmas bird count. So it's over there somewhere. Something definitely ate it. The feathers were all over the place. What could have done that? There are a lot of things that could have. Maybe one of the bigger owls grabbed it, or maybe it died on its own and the scavenger got it, or it's hard to say. But there's a nice proof that they're out there in that area, which we already knew anyways, but it's neat to see that. And you can see look at his finger, how small those talons are. And then we had another thing happen later that winter. Third hand, someone told someone who told Ian about they were rabbit hunting in Addison. They went into a thick thicket of just honeysuckle and buckthorn. They were rooting around for rabbits. They came to a little opening, and there were 23 owls, and they all went woof out of there, except for 2, one of which stayed on the perch and went like that and put its ears way up, and the other one mantled out and went, I'm a big scary thing. The hunter gave really good descriptions of the birds. Again, we were able to obtain permission to visit the site because Ian knows every farmer in Addison County. We went out to the roost site. The owls were gone at that time. We think it was probably right at the end of their season for doing that, for hanging out in big roosts, and that spooked them out and they were done. They decided to go look for breeding territories. So we went and visited the site, and I gotta tell you, it was disgusting. These are owl droppings, and they're not frozen on, they're like icicles. They're like, it's like dripped paint that's been dripped repeatedly again and again and again and again and built up. We found feather, and this is a good, so as I mentioned, their breast and undertail coverts have these stripes with crossed bars on it, so that is proof that that was long-eared owls that were nesting there. Short-eared owls also will roost in big roosts like that, so there was a little question in our mind if he got it right. That was the clincher. There were owl pellets all over the ground, hundreds and hundreds of owl pellets. And I don't know if you know, at Dead Creek Wildlife Day almost every year, we hold a little owl pellet dissection lab for kids to come in and dissect owl pellets. Under the license, and you can't just go around collecting owl pellets, under the license that Carol Ramsire from Otter Creek Audubon Society has to possess birds and bird remains, we were able to go out and collect a bunch of them. This is Ian Worley's hand. He's just picking them up with his hands. I did not do that. I think the batteries died on this. He's just picking them up with his hands. I used baggies to pick them up. I wasn't picking up with my hands. We collected hundreds of them, the good-looking ones. Some of them were smashed down and melted into the snow and not very good condition, but all the good ones we could find, we bagged them up. Ian took them home, and what you do with these things is you bake them in the oven. I don't remember what the temperature is. You bake them for hours. They smell terrible. Carol Ramsire's done it before. Her husband says the worst cookies ever. But we were able to collect a whole bunch of them. So usually when you get owl pellets, you buy them from a company that has rescued birds that can't go back into the wild. And what they do is they feed them your regular garden variety white lab mice. And so when you get those, you get this very mono, every one of them is containing just that kind of basic lab mouse. When we started taking these apart, or the kids started taking these apart, and you can see they enjoyed it, they were able to find a wide variety of different rodents in there. The white-footed mouse or deer mouse, voles, moles, shrews, and so it was a much more interesting thing to have locally sourced, organic, long-eared owl pellets than the commercial white mouse pellets.
Why do you bake them?
Just to sterilize them and dry. They're wet inside too, and you want to dry them out, so you just have dry fur, and to sterilize them because you don't want to give any kids some communicable disease.
Would the owls use the same roosting area every year?
I'm going to come to that.
Okay, I'll wait.
So, no long-eared owls, no long-eared owls, 18 birds, then the next year 25 birds, 25 adults, no nests, so 23 of those were at the roost. And we did find 2 new owls that year. No, we reconfirmed 2 old sites that year. And then next year we got into it again because the owl pellets. We revisited sites we previously knew. We investigated that roost. Did I say it was a Bridgeport before because it's in Addison? We went back there again. It was being used lightly by short-eared owls. We went out one evening and we decided what we wanted to do was stand back away from it and watch owls leave at dusk. And what happened was a short-eared owl flew over right at dusk, and he flew over back and forth, and they make this little cat sound, this ramp, 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 ramp. Steve Steve did that about 10 times, and then 2 more short-eared owls came out, and then flew on, and short-eared owls started coming from everywhere. But there weren't any long-eared owls in there. We visited some new sites where we hadn't had owls in previous year. One of them was in Waltham, and we did discover a potential nest there. We had a really excellent time. We went in and we were going to sneak around and look for possible nest sites. Ian went one way, I went another way. We lost each other. I ended up at one far end, he ended up at another far end. An owl started hooting. I saw one come out, came back and went around the outside of this thicket and found Ian. He said, I found an owl down here. Well, I found an owl up there. So there was a pair. So that's a potential nesting site. We walked out of that field that is very deep in some cow pastures, like through 3 or 4 fences. We thought there was another potential site, maybe 3/4 of a mile away. So we went to that site. We started doing a little playback to see if we could get one to hoot at us. And then we heard coyotes about a half mile away to the north of us, and we said, oh, that's kind of neat. Shut off the owl thing, and then right after that, another coyote right down the hill about 20 yards away does the classic howl. That will get your adrenaline running. That was very exciting. Visited another site in Cornwall, again, another potential nesting site there. Walked through a trail that they have for horses that goes through the middle of a thicket. Suddenly had that alarm call going constantly. Got out into the fields below, one started hooting. Interestingly, we had short-eared owls going around at the same time there. And then we had a saw-whet owl calling. That was a really busy night. And then when we were walking out of that place, after having successfully confirmed that, we had this weird encounter where a red fox was following us, and then it would sneak around in front of us and pause, and then it would go around behind us and sneak around in front of us. I don't know what it found so interesting about us, but it watched us for a while and followed us like that until we got further away, and then it took off. So a lot of other sightings besides owls when you go out looking for owls. Results for 2017, 2018, 18 birds at 10 sites, 18 adults, no nests confirmed, but 1 highly probable. And since then, essentially all we've wanted to do is try to get them into the Christmas bird counts. But here we go. Results by town. This is overall. Shoreham, we found 1 site. Bridport, we found 5 with 1 nest. Cornwall, 5 sites with 1 nest in 2016, 1 probable nest in 2018. Addison, 6 sites, 1 a winter roost with 23 owls. Weybridge, 1 site, and Waltham, 1 site. Christmas bird counts. So using our knowledge, our now good knowledge, I think, so we've gotten long-eared owls in 2017 and 2018. I think maybe the 2017, was that Tyler and Mike?
That was Tyler's flyover.
That was Tyler's flyover, right. But that was based on our knowledge. And then 2018, we actually had 2, but someone forgot to write his down on the sheet, so the second one didn't get into the Christmas bird count that year. Mount Abe continued with theirs, and then just this year, I guess that should say 2020, not 2019, but just this year, Heinsberg had their first ever long-eared owl. Based on no knowledge, this was another one of those original Kismet birds that just happened to fly in front of the owler's car. That was Spencer Hardy out there, another person with amazing birding luck. So they got their first ever. We still have a lot of unknown things we don't know about. Are the numbers of breeders stable or eruptive? Do they go up and down based on things like food availability or habitat. How long does that red cedar habitat last? Eventually it's going to change and go probably to hardwood. Are there habitat types they use that we haven't identified? That's quite possibly, once we discovered this method for finding them, we've kind of been looking through a little keyhole at that. There might indeed be some other types of places they'll do their nests. And is there a difference between nesting habitat and roosting habitat? We have one anecdotal. We need more data points on that. We need to find more roosts or hear about more roosts. So the big question I bet you're all asking is, how can you see a long-eared owl? So what you can do is you can look for those red cedar stands, and you can go in there around breeding season, get landowner permission if you can, or don't go if you don't get permission, obviously. Or you can go and look for those deep, thick thickets of shrubs in the roosting season, see if you can find some shrubs, maybe take up rabbit hunting. Or I think probably the easiest thing you can do is you can cheat. This is the owl banding station. Every year on the north end of Snake Mountain in October, Rodney Olson, now in conjunction with us and Vermont Fish and Wildlife, holds what we call bird banding weeks. Most of the week is having kids come out to a bird banding site at Dead Creek Wildlife Management Area. But we do have two. Now, it was one before. It was supposed to be two this year. The second one, it was too wet, so they couldn't park cars in the field. But the past 2 years, they have caught long-eared owls at that site. And before, when they used to do that at the same place for diversified occupation, they would do that too. So 2 of the last 3 years, they've had long-eared owls. I'd say if you really want to see a long-eared owl, this is probably the easiest way to do it. You might not get them, but you have a higher probability than doing all the work that we did. And here's another, that's proof that they had them this year too. So, any questions?
What time of night did you go out?
We would go out at sunset, and the owls would come out at what they call civil twilight. And this is something Ian knows from his piloting. You know, it became a big deal, like calculating what time is civil twilight, and we'd know when we'd want to be there, like maybe a half hour before, and we'd be out there in the field. We'd be, you know, owlers out standing in the field, and it was pretty remarkable. Almost always they started to come out right at that civil twilight time. I don't know why that. Civil twilight is when the sun has gone down and it just transitions from being light to dark. So not at sunset, but the sun has gone down, and then there's a transition time to when your eyesight has to change from day vision to night vision. That's civil twilight. So that's the time we would go. Ironically, you guys are in here tonight. If you go outside, it's a nice moonlit night. This would have been a perfect night to go out and look for owls. It's a good night where you can hear them and you can see them. So, fortunately, you're in here. Yeah?
Did you get any sense for how big the patch of cedar needed to be, or is that you just didn't have the sample size?
Sample size would be maybe like minimum like 3 acres. Yeah, and usually those fields, what they are is fallow fields where the cows used to be. And sometimes they'll put the cows in them, and the cows are eating out what's under the cedar, and that's what makes it this monoculture of cedar. Yeah?
Have any of these been found dead? I know, for instance, some owls have been getting hit on Route 7 over the years, where they prey on crossing rodents.
I haven't heard of roadkill long-ears. That's not something I've heard of. Jim?
2. One roadkill by Shardvilla,
Shardvilla?
and Another one appeared to have run into a barn or a window.
Oh, flew into a window
Salisbury.
in Salisbury,
In
so two in
Salisbury,
Salisbury.
okay.
We did look in Salisbury, Jim. We didn't have any luck.
Just down the road from us.
Yeah,
Have you looked in Ferrisburg?
yes.
With no luck?
We've got, yeah, that's more, one of the sites I think of as a place we need to go and check is in Ferrisburg. So, yeah. We spent a ton of time when we weren't finding anything in Ferrisburg, all around Little Otter Creek, you know, because you think about it, you know, it's those great stands of conifers in there, but no, they weren't in there, yeah.
So did these active sites actually have a large body of water on them?
No, they did not. So, thinking about the scale of Montana versus Vermont, and what the habitat is out right there, where it'll be in Montana, large plains of grass away from the mountains, down in the flats, and there will be a river running through it, and there will be the trees and shrubs. It makes sense that they find them near water. Essentially, in Vermont, you're never away from water. There's always water somewhere down here in the Champlain Valley. So I think as a search parameter, that was not useful for us here.
Were they more quiet than other owls? Did they vocalize less? And why aren't they being heard more regularly by residents?
They are on the quiet side. Yeah, they don't belt it out. I don't know. I mean, yeah, I think from a further, you can definitely hear a barred owl from much further away. You can hear a great horned owl from much further away. Saw-whets, they project pretty well. Long-eared, not so much. Yeah, they're pretty quiet on the quiet side.
Do they call from inside the woods?
Yeah, they sing from in cover. Yeah.
Did you find any other owls in their habitat?
Sometimes, well, that nesting site in Bridport, we were regularly hearing a great horned owl in the same place. So, yeah, sometimes, yeah. And in that the most recent one we found in Cornwall, like I said, there were short-eared owls nearby down, but they would be nesting down in the fields. So, yeah.
You said you go out and capture them. How do you capture them?
Oh, so Rodney Olson, when he does the banding, he puts out nets and he plays the hooting song, and they get curious and they fall into the nets, and yeah, that's how they catch them out there. Yeah. So yeah, look for that in the Addison Independent or in our material. We'll be promoting that. So yeah.
Any idea of the size of their nesting territory? And are 3 eggs typical?
I think it's, yeah, I should have put that in there. I think it's 2 to 4. 3 eggs is right in the middle of that. So the size of their territory, no, I don't know that. Yeah, there's still a lot. When you get into the deeper literature, there's still a lot of open questions on them. Yeah, they're not a very deeply studied bird.
And then
And their breeding season starts in
March to about May. So by about May, they should be fledging out. If they fail, they probably don't re-nest. I've read one thing in the literature of birds that stayed on a nest with sterile eggs for like 6 weeks before they removed the eggs. But yeah.
So a lot of the other owls start nesting now, right?
Yeah, they're later. Like the horned owls are starting now. The barred owls will be starting soon. They're later into the season than the others. Yeah.
What's the structure of those stands like? Is it really super brushy underneath? Is it
No,
underneath?
there's a dead, because the cedar's shaded out, there's a dead understory, and you can get in there and you can kind of walk around. There'll be like dead shrubs underneath that you kind of have to bushwhack through sometimes.
Okay.
But that's what it's pretty clear underneath. You can stand up and the foliage is yay high above you.
So those conifer fields you see where they're pretty much, 5, 6, 7 feet tall, that's too young for this kind of thing?
Yes, Yep,
Okay.
yep, yep. It has to get pretty old, yep.